thank you very much for inviting us. It's our pleasure to be here. We have spoken to many of you before.
So you can advance previous slides.
So we have presented previously at the Moore School over the last couple of years. So thank you very much. I'm glad many of you were able to make it. I see some of the same faces, I see some new faces. What I would like, what would bring us, MassDOT, great deal of pleasure is knowing that when you leave here tonight, that you have a full understanding from me and from MassDOT directly as to what this undertaking is all about at Beacon Park Yards at the Alston I-90 interchange. It is abutting your neighborhood. It certainly abuts a recreational resource, the Charles River, Magazine Beach, so I know it's near and dear to the community and near and dear to your hearts, as much as it is to the city of Boston. It certainly comes out loud and clear in any of the public information meetings that the impression is that MassDOT isn't given enough importance to what the impacts of this project may be to the community of Cambridge and the Cambridgeport area. That's not true. I mean, we've had the opportunity to have Bill Degnan representing your interests here at the task force, and more recently, Henrietta Davis being appointed to the task force. So your voices are heard. So please, don't feel shy about asking any questions that you're not too sure about tonight. And before I even open, if there's anything that you have right now that's pressing concern for you that you don't know, before I jump into it, please let me know. I mean, I'm here, Michael O'Dowd, I'm here with Nathan Brown Curtis, who's a representative of our design team, our legislative director's office, with, what's your name again? Everybody knows Donnie Daly. This is his neighborhood. He grew up there. Go right ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Henrietta Davis, and I'm the neighborhood representative to this process. And this is relatively new that I'm with this, but it's been the past couple of months, and I've been kind of catching up with all the issues. And I just thought it would be helpful to you to know some of the issues, to reprise what some of the issues are. You want me to? Yeah. I need the cheat sheet. Yeah. Thank you. I just thought before you went off and did a presentation that was more generic than needed to be, that might help you to know what some of the issues are that have come up. And I know you heard loud and clear, so to speak, that people were concerned about noise issues related to a viaduct and how noise transmission across from this project to the Cambridgeport neighborhood and to Magazine Beach, but to the neighborhood as well, was very important to people. So that's one thing. Another thing that is new since the last time we met is more about the roadways and the way you're thinking of redesigning the roadways and creating access from Cambridge to Cambridge, and in particular things like potential closing down Star Drive, the Star Drive exit to Cambridge, which I think some people may notice. And similarly, that the Mass Turnpike access is going to be different. And so I thought you want to know that before you, yeah, it's worth knowing ahead of time. Open space we've talked about, and I think people are happy about the additional open space. Bike and ped access has been, still needs improvement, of course, but I think the conversation's been pretty robust about that. Some of us who recently were concerned that the Grand Junction Railroad connection is not really figuring into this. And in the long run, that we want to be able to use the whole of the river and have access across the way. And construction noise, number 6, and number 6, construction, because as bad as the noise will be when the thing is all done, or as good as it will be, during construction there are different issues. And then transit improvements that would put West Station in play and get more people used to riding transit coming to and from Cambridge. So, ordinarily I wouldn't just jump up like this, but I'm hoping it'll help you to frame some of what you were going to give as a presentation and also to frame the discussion.
Thank you so much, indeed. I think by the end of this you will be pleased, hopefully, going through my mind right now some of the comments that you just mentioned, that we should be touching on each and every one of them. One of the things I have heard though, and I want to put this to rest quickly, is that this understanding that MassDOT is on this fast track to construct this project. As much as I'd like to say if that was the case, we have a full public process ahead of us. So we are just now, if any of you didn't have an opportunity or didn't attend the meeting on December 8th at the Jackson Dam Community School in Union Square, this right now is just another step in the process of developing a draft environmental impact report. At which point in time, there will be an opportunity for each and every one of the public, the communities, the neighborhoods, regulatory agencies, as a whole, to be able to provide comments on everything that we've received over the past 3 years. So this has been an ongoing process. We've received a lot of comments from the communities, the neighborhoods, individuals, regulatory agencies. The DEIR, Draft Environmental Impact Report, is our opportunity to try and present to you all of the comments, all of the feedback that we've gotten over the last 3 years, presented to you in a document that allows you to look at the entire project. It will take you some time to go through it from cover to cover. It will be a very hefty, a very detailed environmental impact report that tries to touch on all of the environmental impact responses or assessments and evaluations of environmental impacts, all the various concepts that have been considered to date, what the opportunities are, the challenges, the risks, construction costs. There'll be a lot of information in there for each and every one of you to go through. Perhaps you won't be concerned with each chapter of it, but that's fine. Our idea is to try and solicit information from you on what it is that's near and dear to your concerns. With that said, we just jump into the presentation, because I know you don't want to be here any longer than possible. And I just shut off, we're all done. So, meeting agenda. I just did the first phase, project purpose. So, the project purpose and project area, the purpose is that we have a deficient interchange out there right now. The existing viaduct that's out there has faced a lot of deterioration over the years. Many people would reflect it as being or regard it as being neglect. And unfortunately, that is the case. There is so much demand on the bridges and substructures and the foundations and the viaducts that we have throughout the Commonwealth that sometimes some of our important structures do go, I won't say neglected, but they get on a backlog of various concerns and immediate repairs that need to be undertaken. This is one of them. It was built back in the early 60s, so we are here now 50 years later, almost 60 years later, and identifying what the concerns are, the issues that we have. AET, so for all of you, the transponders in your all-electronic tolling. So the all-electronic tolling provided us an opportunity to look at, is there an opportunity now to consider how we will modify the interchange so it will be a seamless transition between the existing viaduct or coming out from, say, the Hines, coming out I-90, heading west, without having to necessarily go through the various winds and turns that are on I-90 right now. With AET eliminating all the tolls and the stopovers and the slowdowns at the plazas, and being able to consider going straight through, you maintain a regular rate of speed, not necessarily faster than what you do, but you won't have a lot of the stop and go. What that does is there is a reduction in noise and a lot of the braking actions that you have and a lot of the trailer concerns. So hopefully that will, and we have experts tonight in the house that can address those concerns for you. Some of the other things, like safety concerns at the intersections as they approach Cambridge Street. So we're trying to clean up a lot of those in those areas as well. So it addresses a lot of concerns that we have. CSX has now been discontinued at that particular location, the intermodal area. They moved all of their structure and facilities out Western Mass. So that entire area now has provided an opportunity for DOT to reconsider how the rail infrastructure can work. So you have heard a lot of talk about a future West Station. That is the case. You've also heard a lot of talk about a layover, an opportunity for DOT to consider, are there ways that we can improve our commuter rail service? But in doing so, we need to be able to lay over some of the additional rail rolling stock that's necessary to provide those services. This provides an opportunity to do that. So there's a host of benefits and opportunities that exist for DOT, but also improvements for the neighborhoods, both on Boston and on the Cambridge side of Prince Charles. Shared priorities. Well, I just went through many of them, but I'll give you a second to go through them yourselves and look at it. What we look at this as being, from day one, an opportunity to create a fully multimodal interchange. And I say that not lightly, because we recognize some of the deficiencies that we have with regards to bicycle, pedestrian, recreational uses, transit, bus options. Our ultimate goal is to be able to improve upon and address all of those areas that are lacking right now. While I want to, there's no laser on this, but I want to
Center button, Mike. Center button.
Oh, it is, okay. Right here. Protect the abutting and adjacent neighborhoods during construction. That is of critical concern to us on every project we do. We try to get in and get out and not disrupt the entire livelihood in the neighborhoods that exist, whether it be businesses, whether it be residential, whatever the case may be. And we strive to do that on every project we undertake. It's not always possible. But to the extent we can, we want to mitigate those and minimize those concerns. Here's the project purpose. There's a lot going on here between replacing the existing viaduct, as I mentioned, straightening I-90, realigning Soldiers Field Road, which is something that has only come about very recently. The opportunity to realign Soldiers Field Road and to account for or expand upon the existing Paul Dudley White Path, which many of you refer to as the Narrows, but expand upon that green space and create additional acres of open space adjacent to the Charles, while at the same time continuing the functions of Soldiers Field Road and I-90.
How does Cambridge Street?
So Cambridge Street will, and you'll see as we go further into this, Cambridge Street will become the touchdown point for the interchange. So there will be, what exists right now is you really have two primary ramps coming off of I-90 east and west. There will be 4 points of access and egress between I-90 and Cambridge Street, which will then be the separation point between points Cambridge.
And I'm confused, because Cambridge Street is, I think it's over, across the Longfellow Bridge.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, so Cambridge Street in the Boston area versus Cambridge Street approaching Main Street in Cambridge, yes.
I see.
And the layover in West Station, as I mentioned.
I see.
The project area. That area right now constitutes about 91 acres. So it's a significant, when you look at it from an elevated point of view, say if you are on top of Cambridge Street at Alston Village, and you're at the overpass and you're looking east towards Boston, and you look at the entire area that was once occupied by CSX, it constitutes about 90 acres of land that will be developed at some point in the future. The landowner is Harvard University, so there should be no surprises by any of you. It's been long, widespread information that's been out in the public for many years now. But Harvard University owns it. MassDOT retains rights to continue to function its transportation easements and transportation functions through this area. I-90, all of the ramps and connecting roads to be able to bring you back into the neighborhoods. There's a lot of regional use, and we recognize the fact that regional traffic is also being accommodated within a neighborhood. So it's incumbent upon us to try and integrate those two functions. Regional interchange, but also acknowledging the fact that we're introducing regional traffic into a neighborhood. And this is when I'm going to hand it off to Nate Cabral Curtis, who has been handling our public outreach. He's a member of our design team. He's going to carry you through. Like I said, I please ask that you hold any of your questions until such time as Nate is done. We'll be here as long as it takes for you guys to walk away with all the knowledge you need.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. So, again, as Mike said to you, for those of you who have joined us before at our similar meeting at the Morse School on the 15th of December in 2015, these are all of the meetings that we've had with, or actually a sample of the meetings that we've had with the Alston Task Force on which Bill Degnan sits, and more recently, Mayor Davis. We've had targeted briefings as well for the Brookline Transportation Committee. We're currently working with them to see when we'll be going back. And then also for Alston Village Main Streets, public information meeting just last month. Now, these here, if you take a look, when we were speaking with you last year, or even the year before, since it was 2015, there was just getting underway a study in conjunction with this process by the Boston Planning and Development Agency. Used to be called the BRA. And the placemaking process, they used the option that you would have seen last December as a baseline, which was called 3K4. And the goal of that, in a nutshell, taken from their own remarks, was to test the district to ensure a wide range of successful outcomes, meaning can we build a good neighborhood here? And they looked at public realm and open space, mobility and connectivity, development potential and flexibility, meaning how easy is it to get various things into this space, buildings of different types, making it a distinctive context-sensitive place, and then energy efficiency and sustainability. They met with the I-90 task force on all these dates here, and they outputted their work in the fall of this year. Much more information on that is available on our project website. I am going to try to curtail as much of the history lecture as I can, because I know at the Moore School meeting people got impatient with me. So I'm going to speed through some stuff, and then I'll slow way down on the Cambridge issues. As the compositor of this PowerPoint, I was happy to know that more or less I've touched on all of Mayor Davis's issues. And also Bill Degnan, who sent them to me as well. So thank you both. Representative Livingstone, thank you, sir. Do you want to say anything?
I appreciate you coming to Cambridge. This project has a lot of impacts on the neighborhoods, you know, the designers are all across the river. So I appreciate you coming here. So a lot of people here have a real say.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so you'll all remember this. This is, and I won't dwell on this, but this is 3K4. This is what you would have seen in Cambridge on the 15th of December 2015. So the BPDA began to work on this thing, and they came up with a number of recommendations in all of these various areas. So some of these Mike alluded to, some of them we'll go through here. So add I-90 and Soldiers Field Road connections. So this is something we will be talking about later. So that's something that our refined 3K includes in it. Realign portions of Soldiers Field Road. So that means that Soldiers Field Road currently runs along the track of my laser pointer. With the refinements, we have the opportunity to drop it further back into the parcel, increasing the green space here along the river. Create park space along the Charles. Again, with the dropping back of Soldiers Field Road into the parcel, you get more green space there. You'll see that. And then this and the right turn River Street are linked. By doing this, there is an opportunity to create an at-grade, that is no footbridge, no dismount, bicycle and pedestrian connection from Alston out to the river and the Paul Dudley White Path system. So then, I'm also going to go through some things which 3K Refined does not have in them, but this symbol DNP stands for Do Not Preclude, meaning that the design doesn't have it in it for the purposes of the DEIR document, but the design accommodates it. So one item was a direct viaduct connection from the Cambridge Street Bridge, Cambridge Street in Alston, over to the area of West Station. Do not preclude. North-south link for shuttles and buses through West Station. Again, do not preclude. And then this was an idea. This is actually in Cincinnati, where my second in command at Howard Stein Hudson hails from. But this is a bridge with an apron. So the idea is to give any bridges that we have kind of some space around them to make them a little more livable. Some more items. You'll see 3 new streets running to the north off of Cambridge Street and heading up towards Western Avenue. You'll see that in 3K refined. A change in our connection of North Harvard heading up into the neighborhood back this way and up towards Harvard Square. And then strengthen the Cambridge Street edge for early redevelopment along the southern edges. One of the things that you can't see it in 3K refined, but the plan is to have cycle tracks and separated sidewalks along Cambridge Street, both sides, and protected intersections in accordance with the new MassDOT and City of Boston guidelines. Then these are some things we already did. Limiting slopes in the new district to less than 5%. We had that opportunity in 3K4. We're even doing a little bit better now with the refined version. Organize the blocks such that they make easy developing. They agreed we had that. And then create a framework for adaptable and well-sized blocks, which again, we have. And if you do all those things, you come to 3K refined, which is this. So you have the landowner inputting, which Mike talked about. You have the placemaking standards from BPDA. And in addition, you have the recent arrangement of Bruce Houghton at Houghton Chemical to give up the rail spur that runs right along here, which allows us to perform this shove-over activity. When Mike came before you, I was reading the minutes from 2015. Somebody asked, well, can't you just flip the rail spur around? And his response was, we've tried that every which way and someone always gets hurt. So in this case, the rail spur will be going so we can drop the roadway back into the parcel. So those are all some contributing factors to how 3K has become refined. So now I'll walk you through all those in some detail. So we're able to realign I-90 so that it is straighter or closer to the straight. It still has a bit of a curve in it. Decreases the slopes going up to West Station, which is great for bikes and pedestrians and people with limited mobility. It allows some adjustments for the street network. So that dotted line shows you the center line where it was in 3K4. And this shows you just how much it's shifted to the south. Now, I'm going to come to this, and I'm going to show you this slide again when we do Cambridge specifics. This is that increased green space. Okay? This white dotted line is where SFR, or Soldiers Field Road, used to be. Under 3K refined, it's able to dip all the way back in here.
How much is that?
It will actually come up and show you exactly how many acres that is. It's about 2, I think, but
No, but I mean in feet from the edge.
it varies depending on where you are because the road.
125.
Yeah. Is that at the apex, Mike? At 125?
Yeah.
So at the apex of that corner, it's 125, lesser at the end. So this then is also part of the way this works. You have the main line of Soldiers Field Road continuing outbound towards Buckingham, Brown and Nichols, other points west. It goes down into what we call a boat section, which is similar to what's up here. So that would come down, it would pass underneath this roadway connection right here, which would be at the surface, and then behind this, so that you wouldn't necessarily have to get involved in an intersection, you would have your bicycle and pedestrian connections out to the river. Now that comes with a change. So the off-ramps here, to let you make this move, and to let you make that move, are now accommodated down here. So this white arrow that's just come in shows you how the traffic would access. Instead of going up here, it would now come down here, go over the top of that boat section, and get into the system here.
So now it access rivers to go.
Hang on, we get to that in a minute. So then this is removed, and I am going to just gently ask people so that I can get to the Cambridge specific stuff, specifically the issues about noise, to just hang on to the questions until the end, just as we did at Alston, if you would be so good. Okay, so now this is the thing that we want to talk to you guys about at length tonight and get your thoughts on. If you were coming home to Cambridge from somewhere downtown Boston or coming home from the airport today, you make this move. Take a right at the bridge. In the future, assuming that this is taken further into the plan, you would make this move. Right now, you pass through one signal. Under this option, you pass through 3. So just hold that in mind. So again, that's your extra open space that you get from that, in addition to a vast improvement at the narrows for the bicycle and pedestrian path. Fun fact, that's where I had my first ever bicycle accident. So this is that additional 2 acres of open space. The whole thing taken all together, earlier we had looked at realigning this portion of Soldiers Field Road. We could have done that under 3K4. Depending on which option you pick, for the various throat options down in here, you can get up to 4 acres in total of extra green. But 2 of that is always up in here, assuming we keep that. All right, this is that at-grade bicycle and pedestrian connection that I mentioned. You get the widening at the narrows. Now, this is the 3 streets to the north. In 3K4, there were 2. Now there are 3. Part of that is linked to the realignment of, or the different connection of North Harvard Street. Our modeling to date has shown that if you just direct connect North Harvard Street without these 3 streets to the north, all the traffic flows up that way. And we've heard from the Alston community that that's their last bastion of owner-occupied housing that's not been taken over by students, for better or worse. And they would really like to try to keep it that way. They also already have the 66 on there and bicycle lanes, which are heavily used by local folks. So part of trying to make this direct connection that you'll see in a minute work without, you know, causing the flooding out of traffic that they were talking about is having these 3 streets running off that way. So again, just highlighting those. And they pass through the Harvard University Enterprise Research Campus. Then this is that North Harvard Street connection I mentioned. In 3K4, you would have seen it tying in here. So you wound up with a kind of a funny triangular parcel down here. In this case, traffic comes right into this intersection, and if it needs to go up this way, it can go straight across. So there you go. And then the thought would be is that along the top of, or northern edge of what we call Cambridge Street South, you would have a cycle track facility that would bring, and a sidewalk obviously, but a cycle track facility that would bring your riders directly out to the Paul Dudley White Path. At grade here, no footbridge. And that's everything. I'm not going to read everything on that slide, but that is the handout that you all got at the back of the room. So you can take that home with you, and again, this will be posted on the website. This particular graphic is already up. Now, this is some stuff that I may flash through some of this if people are getting antsy, but one of the things that we talked a lot about was the desire, at least last December, at least from the crowd we had at the Moore School, the big interest was a transit connection across through here. The design as it stands today, there is a bicycle and pedestrian connection which has always been provided here. So bicycles and pedestrians, for quite a while now, almost 2 years, the plan has contained the idea that you'd be able to start out on Cambridge Street, ride along on a separated facility, come up the ramp, get into West Station. If you wanted to drop down, come out Malvern Street and go to Commonwealth Avenue. However, as part of our MEPA certificate, we've had to look at this for a full vehicular connection that is general purpose, anybody gets to use it, and also transit. So I'll just flash through some of that now. This is an output from the CTPS model, and in essence what this is showing with this very red section here is if you create a new general purpose connection for all kinds of vehicles, a great many cars would like to use it. And the thought is that causes some changes heading down into Brookline. I just want to let everybody know some of the traffic data that I'm presenting tonight will be subject to change because 3K Refined needs to go through the CTPS model again. But this is still kind of, it's useful and indicative. So again, general purpose traffic, it's kind of a game changer. And just to give you a sense of, this is the end of Malvern Street. It's trying to put a lot of sand through a very small hourglass, I think, is kind of it's tight. So then we began to look at, okay, well, if, you know, all of these things will be laid out fully in the DEIR document that Mike mentioned, but okay, let's pass on from full vehicular and let's take a look at transit. And we have a couple of different options that we looked at it. One is Malvern Street two ways, and that has every transit vehicle going in at Packard's Corner and coming out at Packard's Corner. And for those of you who know it, it's quite the complicated intersection. You've got the main line, carriage roads on either side, and the green line. So part of the issue is, right now, Packard's Corner, you have a very long route for a transit vehicle to come out here and head downtown. And that has some issues associated with it, as you can see. One of the big ones is it takes a long time to clear through that intersection, and it's not really set up to have that movement happen. Right now, the only movements on Malvern are this and this. So that's tight. And the expectation is a fair bit of conflict there. So then another option is to come down from West Station and kind of doodle through the campus and come out on Babcock. That also has some impacts. So you have some changes that you have to make. Again, I know this is a bit boring for this side of the river, so we can come back to these. But it does get you out of some of your impacts at Packard's Corner if you take this approach. It does require some one-ways because you've got to make enough space for the bus to make its turn. One of the things we've heard is that, you know, OOBU already stages a lot of, you know, buses through here for sports and games and things. There is somewhat of a difference between moving in a whole bunch of buses for a sporting event very slowly and trying to run a transit service. So if you go down to this area today on game day, yes, you might see some, you know, Peter Pans or Crystal Transport, that kind of thing parked. But it's different doing that and getting, you know, 4 or 5 in for a field hockey game versus running them all day. Again, some removal of parking is required to get some of these transit vehicles through. Then this is another option, Malvern Street and Buick Street. So you have kind of an interesting circulation here. This is your return to West Station, and then you're coming through West Station and out is via sort of the backside of the campus in Buick. That also has its kind of ups and downs. These are both private ways owned by BU. There's also the issue of this is the back of house. So when something happens at Aganis, and there are quite a few events there a year, BU flips the traffic pattern to get people in and out of this place. So again, that's, you know, you can get a bus or two in there today, but if you're looking at a lot of buses, a steady transit service, there are some changes to be made. And it does come with some private property takings, which we do try to avoid. Buick Street is a little tighter, so you have to make some changes there as well. And then this is actually one interesting option, which is to use Malvern Street to go in, and then the existing highway system to go out, so the bus could actually travel on the highway, come down, get off down around the Prue, make connections in the medical area, and then its return back is, you know, something via the local roadway system. All of these options will be explored fully, the ups and downs in the DEIR document, and you'll have an opportunity to comment on them. So what to expect in the DEIR? Mike has really kind of gone over a lot of this, but the 3K refined is the option that we think that we're taking in there. There will be 3 variants for the section opposite Magazine Beach. So one option is a roadway viaduct bridge, which is what we have today. Obviously a different bridge, one that isn't in its dotage. Another one is just doing everything at grade. So that's the rail next to the road, next to the road, next to the road. That was originally advanced by A Better City, so you may have seen that as the AVC concept. And then there's a rail viaduct over an at-grade I-90 and at-grade Soldiers Field, which was originally advanced by Arioff Sevitt. Some of you may know him as the amateur planner. And they'll all be designed to the same level for the purposes of analysis. Everything's going to be analyzed for noise, traffic, air quality, environmental justice, economic development, and a whole lot more. As Mike said, it will be a big document. So thank you for your patience. I now want to get to some stuff directly touching on Cambridge. So I wanted to show you this one more time. This is the removal of that right turn and the left turn, and accommodating those turns at this boat section and sort of flyover of it right here. Okay? That's what the proposed of 3K refined has in it, specifically for folks coming home to Cambridge.
Where does the left turn?
The left turn would actually be accommodated at the same location. So if you were to make a, say today I wanted to make a left at this location and head over to one of these highway ramps, today I would make a, get off here, truck down here, and instead of making this off to Cambridge, I could head off into the ramp system this way. So that's a trade-off, and I want to get your thoughts on it tonight. It allows a real alleviation of the narrows on the Paul Dudley White path. There's a direct connection for Alston cyclists, obviously, and it provides your Cambridge cyclists with a safer right turn coming back over the bridge because it's a bigger space and they're less likely to tangle up with somebody else. From the car perspective, there's roughly 9,000 vehicles turning right to Cambridge every 24 hours. There's 87 during the peak hour in the morning, 151 during the PM peak hour. Again, all these things will have to go through the CTPS model again, but speaking with Eric Mackey, our traffic engineer, right now the back of the envelope is it's 3 more signals and roughly 3 minutes of additional delay versus the direct connection today. And one of the questions that was posed to us is, well, could you just keep the right turn? And the issue is you can't keep a single right turn exit to Cambridge because of the width you need. So you need an 11-foot lane for the turns, plus an 8-foot clear travel lane in case somebody breaks down in the actual turning lane. You need to be able to squeeze an emergency vehicle by. So from a roadway there perspective, it seems like it's something right now, again, full analysis in the DEIR, but it seems like it's a bit of an all or nothing in terms of pavement there that's for cars perspective. The interesting thing is, and you know, DCR, which is on the stakeholder group, does play a role in this. And we actually, Howard Stein Hudson's on another project with DCR, and we actually just went through this with them. So they're pretty serious about, you know, having, if we're going to have just one turning lane, we need to be able to squeeze an emergency vehicle by as well. So again, we have a new CTPS model run coming in February. This isn't set in stone. This is something we want people to comment on. I know you'll give us your thoughts tonight, so we'd like to hear from you on that topic. BU Bridge Rotary. The 3K refined is, you know, again, these are back of the envelope from Eric. These will be discussed further in the DEIR, but it's not expected to really impact the BU Bridge rotary beyond background traffic growth driven by land use in the area. These are kind of the anticipated routes that we feel that traffic would take. As you can see, it's kind of a limited population that's looking at that as a route to the BU Bridge Rotary. One thing we'll have to test, I suppose, is if you had a direct connection down to Commonwealth Avenue for general purpose traffic, you might see some changes there. Again, new traffic data coming in February, full analysis. The River Street intersections, we're gonna, I think of it as the four square, so it's the 2 River Street intersections and the 2 Western Avenue intersections. We have ongoing discussions with Bill Degnan and other members of the Cambridge traffic transportation staff on that. The thought currently is a leading pedestrian indicator on all of those intersections to help cross bikes and peds. The interchange design going from 3K to 3K refined does not really change how people would use those intersections, but some of those land use decisions within the parcel, depending on what goes there, could impact the volumes. So now you've been really good, so I want to give you what you all came for, which is Jason Ross to talk about noise. There you are, sir.
Thank you, Nate. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. I'm Jason Ross. I'll be here to talk about noise and how noise goes along with this project. I wanted to start with some of the basics, some of the fundamentals about noise. Obviously, we experience noise in our daily lives, but how do we evaluate it? How do we make decisions based upon it as it relates to this project? So one thing to know is that when we're talking about noise, we're talking about A-weighted sound levels, and we use the symbol dBA to recognize that. This is a sound level that corresponds to human hearing. So it's important to understand what we mean when we're talking about dBA. In our everyday lives, we experience various noise sources. We experience trucks going by, we experience trains going by, automobiles. And so when we describe noise, how do we take that into account? That we have certain events that might be loud and other times of the day when it might be quiet. As you can see here, oops, we can certainly understand what the maximum sound level is of some of these events. When a truck goes by at 50 feet, we might have sound levels up at 80 decibels. Comparing that to some of the noise sources that we commonly experience indoors, we might correspond that to shop tools or a food blender. And so this maximum noise level is very intuitive. But it doesn't really relate to how we feel and whether or not we're annoyed by noise. And when we're looking at noise impact, that's really the fundamental thing that we're trying to minimize, is the potential for humans to get annoyed by noise. And so to do that, we look at a sound level called the LEQ. This is an equivalent sound level. You can see here sort of the time-varying nature of sound. It rises and it falls. The LEQ is an energy average of that sound level as it rises and falls over a given period. We look at the loudest hour of sound, and that is the LEQ, and that's how we describe sound. So some important things to understand in terms of the physics of sound is how does it relate to traffic noise? Well, certainly the volume of traffic is a very big factor in determining how loud the noise is at your location, at a receiver. And so if you double the amount of traffic, let's say you have 2,000 vehicles in an hour compared to 1,000, that's a 3 decibel increase. The number of trucks, sort of the fleet that is driving on the roads, is also an important factor. Trucks make a lot more noise than automobiles, and so one truck is actually equivalent to 28 cars when you're traveling at 55 miles an hour. And of course, as we all understand, sound reduces with distance. When we're talking about highway noise, that relationship is to reduce noise 3 decibels per every doubling of distance. So as I was showing, some of the sound levels from roadways might be 80 decibels at 50 feet. At 100 feet, they reduce 3 decibels and be down 77 dB. Another thing to understand with noise is that the path that noise takes to get from the roadways to residences, to schools, is also a very important factor. When you have intervening objects such as noise walls, such as Jersey barriers, such as building roads, when you can't see the noise source, that's a fundamental effect to attenuate the sound. And so these are all the things that go into the model and our predictions of what the future noise conditions will be like with the project. So where are we with this noise study? We have conducted noise and vibration measurements throughout the entire study area. We conduct these measurements in order to develop a model. These are models that are developed by the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration for trains. And we conduct noise measurements in your communities to make sure that the model that we're using is valid and that it's providing accurate results. So we are in the process of conducting this modeling for future conditions. We have an understanding of what it is now, of what the existing conditions are, and I'll be presenting some of that information to you. But it's important to understand that it's really a factor of what the future conditions will be and whether or not the noise levels will exceed certain limits in terms of whether or not there are mitigation that may need to be introduced to the project. So as Nate mentioned, the CTPS traffic data are currently being updated with the refinements to 3K4, as well as some other refinements to the geometry that are ongoing. When we look at noise, Noise isn't assessed everywhere. There are, some areas that noise has a greater effect on us, and that's certainly our homes, residences, in schools, museums, libraries, places where peace and quiet have a lot of value, where they might interfere with speech, where they might interfere with your sleep. Areas that noise does not get assessed, it may get assessed but is not really considered a receptor, is industrial areas, commercial areas that primarily have daytime use, have generally higher background noise levels. And this is all based on standard guidelines from the Federal Highway Administration. We also look at parks. Parks is also a very important area. Parks with passive use where there's benches, picnic tables, places where peace and quiet is of value. Noise gets assessed at parks as well. When we look at noise, we really look at whether or not the noise levels are exceeding a noise abatement criteria, whether or not the project needs to evaluate the feasibility and reasonableness of mitigation. And for residential receptors, that noise abatement criteria is 66 dBA. So that's an important number to understand. As sound levels approach or exceed 66 dBA, they're breaking a threshold. So what do we understand about the project right now and what the existing noise conditions are? What you see over here, in this figure, are receptors. We modeled noise at many locations throughout the entire study area, and they're shown in these circles here. And they can be representative of a single home or a group of homes. If it's modeling a few homes, we want to make sure that the noise environment at that location is representative of all the homes that it would include. What we're showing here in the colors is what the general noise levels are right now, what we understand about the existing conditions. Along the Paul Dudley Path, which is sort of considered a trail, a park use, we have high ambient noise levels right now. They're between 71 and 75 decibels. So they're exceeding the noise abatement criteria for park use. When we look at Magazine Beach, as a function of the distance that these the Soldiers Field Road and I-90 is from Magazine Beach, the sound levels attenuates significantly. When we look at receptors that are just along the trail, sort of along the shoreline here, they're just barely exceeding the noise abatement criteria. As we get farther back, closer to Memorial Drive and more in the middle of the park, these sound levels are below the noise abatement criteria right now. This is our understanding. We've done measurements, we've done modeling, and this includes the contributions both from highway noise and from rail sources. So what does this tell us? This tells us that we understand that future noise levels at Magazine Beach may exceed the criteria just sort of at the shore of Magazine Beach, but not necessarily much farther back into Magazine Beach. So we're also looking at receptors deeper into Cambridgeport. We've heard that this is of concern to the community, and we want to know what the noise environment is and whether or not different project decisions can affect the noise that will be in the community. So in looking at receptors that are on streets such as Granite Street and Glenwood Ave and at the Morse School, we find that we're getting into areas where the sound levels are significantly below the noise abatement criteria. A measurement up here at Glenwood Ave showed sound levels to be in the upper 40s, around 50 decibels. So we're talking 15 or 16 decibels below the noise abatement criteria. So what is contributing to the noise environment here is a lot of other noise sources other than I-90 and Soldiers Field Road. Memorial Drive is one of the more dominant noise sources here, but you also have local traffic on Magazine Street and other roads that are also contributing to the noise environment. When we look at noise throughout this community, I do want to make a point that we look at noise, for example, this two-family home. We look at noise in areas of frequent outdoor human use. And so for the sort of first floor of this two-family home, we would look at a receptor that is sort of in this porch area, perhaps on the ground. And then for the second family, you know, this is a nice balcony here where there's a frequent, soon to be frequent outdoor human use, and we'll look at a receptor as there as well. So moving further up towards Riverside, we have you know, this high-rise building, and there are balconies on this building. So we'll be looking at the noise at all of these receptors along those balconies. We're also looking at noise up here by the Riverside Press Park. So as you know just understood from Nate, there's you know some project improvements to Soldiers Field Road as it comes up to River Street, and so while this is you know at least you know 500 feet away from those roads, we're looking at the noise that is currently that currently exists at these receptors. And what we see is that you know we have orange dots here. The orange or the red are showing that they're exceeding the noise abatement criteria. But what's really important to understand is why are those noise levels above what they are. And it really is a function of the traffic on Memorial Drive and on River Street that are much closer to these locations than it is to I-90 or it is to Soldiers Field Road. So we're going to be looking at you know these upper floor receptors, and you know while we have noise levels that exceed the noise abatement criteria, it's primarily due to the contribution of noise from Memorial Drive and River Street. So when you understand that, that means that changes different sort of the evaluation of the different options for Soldiers Field Road and for I-90 will have a minimal effect on the noise environment at these receptors because none of them are going to be changing the noise from Memorial Drive or River Street. And so, you know, we'll be looking at all three alternatives. One thing to point out is that from Paul Dudley White Path, there can be some significant differences between the alternatives of, you know, bringing the I-90 down to grade. It's important to understand, right now, this viaduct is actually providing some noise reduction to people on Paul Dudley White Path. It blocks the line of sight, as we were discussing. The path that sound takes is important. It's blocking the line of sight to almost all the automobiles, all the trucks. You don't see anything there. You know, you might see some truck stacks as they come by, but that structure is basically a floating noise barrier. So there's a benefit to keeping the noise, you know, on that elevated guideway for homes on Paul Dudley for receptors on the Paul Dudley path. But as we're talking about Cambridge and we're talking about you know being on Magazine Beach, some 500 feet away. You know, this is a picture taken from Magazine Beach. You see Soldiers Field Road. You see I-90 here. The idea of shifting Soldiers Field Road, you know, 10 or 20 feet to provide for more park space, that does not really have any significant effect at Magazine Beach because it's already 500 feet away. It's 500 feet away. If it's 510 feet away, it's not going to make a significant difference in the sound propagation. Similarly, with the viaduct versus sort of back grade options, you're going to have very similar effects of what will be shielded by the project, whether or not you're looking at some of the at-grade alternatives or the 3K4 refined alternative. You know, one other thing that we've heard from you is, you know, sort of, you know, especially for residents that have been there a long time, is how new developments might change the noise environment. And for example, the BU dorms, we've heard that there's an observation that noise has been bouncing off the BU dorms and coming back into the community, and that's certainly a physical effect. Sound will bounce off hard surfaces and can get back into the community. But in regard to the other noise sources being the rest of the highway that isn't near BU that is going to be heard, or Soldiers Field Road, or the local roads, this observation would most likely be just a slight different character to the sound than a real change in the absolute sound level. So what do? What's going to happen as we start understanding more about what the future conditions will be throughout the whole study area and certainly within Cambridge? Well, as I said, when noise levels exceed the noise abatement criteria, there are very clear guidelines in whether and how you evaluate the feasibility and reasonableness of noise mitigation, noise walls. And so this is a process that all state DOTs follow. And it's important to know that there are numerous projects throughout the Commonwealth, and the need to prioritize and sort of decide where noise mitigation is most effective and where it's warranted is an important process that needs to go on. And so that's why there are these guidelines in this process to evaluate that. First and foremost is it needs to be constructible and safe. We need to have safe highways, safe roadways, and so there are various factors that a noise wall can influence the safety of a highway. You need adequate space from the road so that if there's an accident, you're not crashing into a wall. There's the need for snow removal. There are various factors. There's lines of sight that must be maintained if you're looking at building barriers up to intersections. Then you need to make sure that you're not going to be, limiting the lines of sight for drivers. So that's a very critical and first and foremost aspect. The other thing is that the expense of mitigation of noise walls must be reasonable. And so what you do is you look at the cost effectiveness. And that depends on the size of the barrier and the amount of noise reduction that it provides to the community. When you have receptors that are going to get about a 5 decibel noise reduction or more, that's considered a benefit. And those receptors, whether or not they're impacted or not, will help support the calculation of determining whether or not a barrier would be cost effective. But it must also be acoustically effective. And so when you're looking at the first row of receptors, you need to make sure that that noise barrier, that noise mitigation, is going to provide a minimum of 5 decibels of noise reduction. In some circumstances, noise walls may not be effective. If you have, for example, receptors up on high floors that would just see right over a noise wall, then that's not going to be effective. If there are already intervening objects, introducing another intervening object, being a noise wall, can often have very minimal effect in reducing noise. Another acoustical factor is looking at whether or not it would provide at least 10 decibels to one impacted receptor. And so that is an acoustical design goal that must be met. Ultimately, the decision for moving mitigation forward is that it needs to be wanted. It needs to be desirable to the community. And so there's a process that goes on where there's a public meeting and information about a proposed noise barrier that was found to be cost effective and acoustically effective is presented to the community. And there's voting. There's a voting survey that is done for an understanding of whether or not the abutters and those that would benefit from the noise wall would like it. And so that's part of the process as well, of course. And that's all I have for noise. I think,
I can just wrap it up. Thank you, sir. So, next steps, we will continue public outreach. As Mike said, this is one step on a long road. We anticipate being in front of the Brookline Transportation Committee in February. We're not exactly sure when we'd pull the task force back together again, but we think it would be sometime in advance of the DER filing. The DER filing is going to include the 3K refine that you saw with a full accounting of these 3 various options for what's known as the throat section, or that's really the section opposite Magazine Beach. The term throat is used extensively by the task force. I keep looking for the project's ears and nose and eyes so I can get the full medical approach to it. And then, once we get through the DEIR, that's one more step along the road to advancing a preferred alternative into a preliminary design. This is where we are, sitting right here at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. We're working through our filings, working preliminary design, procurement. So you're really looking at construction just to make sure that I'm matching it up. That's still a few years out, and it does endure for a while. One of the things that will be looked at, we continue to look at is, how easy is it to construct these things? So if there are opportunities to safely get anything shorter, we will, but that's where we are right now. And I'm going to leave the questions and comments piece up just so that you can all get contact information. I'd encourage everybody to sign in. It's important that you do, so that when we have meetings, you can find out about them. When the DEIR goes out, anybody in the database would be alerted. So at this point, you sat like champions. We appreciate all of your patience. Questions and comments, and I'm going to try to hit people who I didn't see at the meeting last month first. So I'm going to go first to red sweater, and then to white sweater, and then to maroon sweater, and then we'll do some others. And the one thing I'd ask is, if you can, just try to keep it down to about 2 minutes worth of question and statement so that we can make room for everybody. All right, go to it, sir.
I'll talk now. I live on Greenwood Avenue, Glenwood Avenue, and on the second floor. I think probably your meetings were at ground level, my guess is, so it's going to be a little louder up there where we can see over the traffic. I also wonder your measurements, are they averages of impact? Because when 18-wheelers put on...
I recommend you just stay up here with me.
...use their engines for brakes, the noise level goes way up.
Yes, so to your first point, yes, the noise measurements were done at ground level, although as I mentioned, we model noise levels in many other areas, including upper floor receptors where they're multifamily uses, where it's an individual unit at those upper levels, and that will be accounted for in the model, in that the noise levels very well may be slightly higher at those upper levels as you start seeing over the homes and the more school in front of you, and as you start gaining more lines of sight to those sources, the noise will change. And in regards to engine braking, truck engine braking, I've heard that this is something that's observed, and certainly trucks can do the Jake braking and create a noise. In relation to the total noise exposure, this is sort of a high noise event. Over the course of an hour, that type of event gets sort of watered down a little bit. Some of the changes to the tolling and sort of the changes to the need for trucks to slow down and stop into the tolls can very much help alleviate that condition. The future alteration, horizontal and vertical alteration to the roadway would certainly change the dynamic. Overall, I'm not a highway design engineer, so I can't speak to it exactly, but there's a general interest in maintaining a good flow of traffic and not in creating significant grades up or down that cause cars to accelerate, trucks to accelerate, or trucks to use their engine braking. So that would generally be a desired improvement, hope to eliminate that type of noise source.
Yes, ma'am, go right ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I wasn't clear on how are we going to reach bridges still, or how are we going to get to it, how we're going to do it?
Sure, that's no problem. That's an easy one.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, so she asked, for those of you who live in Cambridgeport, will there still be 2 bridges over the river? So yes, there will still be a River Street Bridge, and yes, there will still be a Western Avenue Bridge. So that is untouched. Let me just chug back through these and close your eyes if you get queasy on rides. Okay, so today, if you're, let's just say you're coming home from the airport and you come up Starrow Drive and Soldiers Field Road. Today,
No, I-90.
oh, I-90, okay. Oh, all right, very good. Okay, so if you were getting off I-90, let's say you took the Williams Tunnel. You're coming up from downtown, you'd split off from the main line of I-90 right about here. you'd come around here, you get into this intersection right here, come across, come up here to Cambridge, and you'd be able to head home that way. Now, if you just give me one more minute to give you a broader view of the space.
What about coming down?
I was just going to tell you going downtown. I wanted to give you a full. Oh, that'd do. Okay, so let's say you've come across up here at Western Avenue, and you've made your left. You're onto Soldiers Field Road. There would be this thing that we call North Connector. You see this yellow line, a North Connector right here. So you would be able to come down here, turn this way, come across this intersection, come down here, and now you're able to access the ramp system from this point. So you still have access to the turnpike. It does change a bit. One of the things that this intersection, today is currently known for is it has all these entrances and all these exits and a great deal of pavement, and it's very scary for the pedestrians and the cyclists. Part of what we're trying to do here with this North Connector Road is pull some of these swooping turns out of it so that you're able to, these turns are happening in a more kind of right angle method, and it's a little more comfortable and slow for everybody.
Would it be 5 years without access for construction, or is that going to be?
So the goal would be is that we would try to preserve access for all at the most amount of times possible. That is the, well, I know you chuckle, but so the point is that there are times at which and I'm living in a construction project right now on the Casey Arborway. My house has a ringside seat. But there are times where if, late at night, the opportunity is, hey, if we were to close something at night or over a weekend, and we could greatly speed things up and, ease some of the long-term low-level pain by ripping a Band-Aid off, that option would be investigated. But yes, the goal would be not to just say, well, folks in Cambridgeport aren't going to the Mass Turnpike for the next 5 years. Okay, you were next, sir.
I'm a maroon sweater.
Is it maroon, or do you think it's purple?
I think it is.
Okay,
Purple.
I like it.
My name's Dennis Carlone. I'm a counselor and an urban designer. And from what I saw previously, there are definitely improvements. I think it's very clever the way you're getting to the bridge from Starro Drive and begins to slow traffic down gradually. Well, that's great.
Thank you, sir.
Two comments on this drawing. One is, I think everybody in this room, looking at the overall project, wants the green to be deeper. 125 feet, not much can happen there except a few more trees buffering the path. It's not an event place. And given the thinness of the path that exists north and south of it, this is it. This is the only place that's going to happen on the river in most of our lifetime. And the percentage of open space versus development and roads is extremely low, given that this is the 21st century. The other thing, and it might be graphic, the use of yellow, I understand why you've done that. It appears that all the yellow roads are at least 2 lanes in each direction. So, is that true? The yellow local roads.
Yeah, that's more or less true.
So each of those roads, my point is, each of those roads are like Mass Avenue between Harvard and Porter. And so they're sort of boulevards. It's a neighborhood of road boulevards, not necessarily beautiful Parisian boulevards. So the scale of those intersections are huge. And that is a little scary from a pedestrian point of view. I know you know this, but I just wanted, it's possible the yellow makes it seem even bigger, but it's just something to think about of focusing in on that.
So, Councilor, just a couple of quick responses to you. I understand the desire to push Soldiers Field Road deeper into the parcel. There are geometric concerns with too much bend.
Yeah.
There are also implications with the landowner. The other thing that I would note, and I did flash through it, but the BPDA study did talk about the idea of how they might organize green spaces within this area. So we're not showing them because, again, we're trying to showcase the roadway connections and all that, but the idea wouldn't be that this would just be, you know, straight up boulevards with, you know, just buildings all over the place, everywhere. The idea would be to develop that space with some green to it, just to break it up.
We're only talking about DOT. We can't control the other one now. We'll do that in the future. But I'm sure Harvard wants a significant waterfront park for their upper classroom dorms, just like they have elsewhere. So I think we can help you on that.
Okay.
But the geometry can be improved north of Cambridge Street to widen the park. In fact, I saw a scheme earlier tonight that does that. You mentioned, when you do a lot of words, we know there's a lot of stuff to go through. But it would be great during the audio, the noise study, when you say 10 dBAs is this and 5 is that, to have that diagram next to it that said what 65 dBA relates to, what's the difference between 5 and 10. So yeah, it's a number that sounds reasonable. Now, the thing is 65 is an average. That means half the people in this room don't like 65. The other half thinks it's fine. So generally, you worry about the 20% that's in the most critical area, which I suspect is lower than 65. And could you tell us what 60, I know you know this by heart, what 65 was the equivalent to? Was it the air conditioner? I know it wasn't a truck, but.
Yeah, that's head there.
It's a lot of slides, and a lot of information.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So, you know, when you're talking about sources like trains, those are intermittent noise sources. Highway noise and roadway noise is relatively constant. So when you compare noise to sort of constant sources indoors, you can make a pretty reasonable comparison. A food blender at 3 feet, when you're using a food blender, it's a pretty loud, you know, they can be a loud condition. That's 75 decibels. And an air conditioner is on constant at 50 feet, sort of an outdoor air conditioner might be in the low 60s. And sort of just to speak to your, you know, question about the criteria, you know, there's been a lot of historical research done by the EPA, by the FHWA, in understanding what is a significance threshold. Where do you need to draw the line to determine that you've annoyed too many people to develop a criteria, and that's all.
But again, half below, half above, as far as being affected by it. And that's what I'm getting at. And
well, it's actually far less than that. For example, with aircraft noise, with a 65 DNL, it's a day-night average sound level. It's over a whole 24-hour period. They have a threshold of significance when annoyance reaches 12%. So it isn't just that half, you know, 50% of the people are annoyed, 50%
I
are
know
not.
you know this, the sound ordinance says in Cambridge that's what it's supposed to be. And annoys the heck out of people, even when it says 65. So I'd be careful about that number. The other thing I wanted to ask, the difference between 5 and 10. So 10 is heavy trucks cruising at 55 and maybe going down 10 is automobiles cruising, throttling at 55. That's hard for people to understand. I'm not disputing you, I'm just saying we need a graphic to explain.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, where actually I thought you were going with that comment was the concept of actually hearing noise and actually hearing what the difference in sound levels are. And it's something that I've done on numerous occasions. It's challenging. Outdoor noise, when you reproduce it indoors, is tough because somebody close to a speaker is going to experience something very different than somebody in the back of the room. But even with that, you know, that's certainly something that can be added to these presentations if it's really going to provide benefit. It's a little bit best done with that.
I'm trying to be quick because I know my time's up. The public living room is the river. That's where we want to be many times of the day. So the sound there is even more critical. And yeah, maybe when you're in the neighborhood edge, it'll be 65, but not where there might be a beach someday. If you go up at North Point, which I worked on, and you hear the buzz of the new highway, it's pretty annoying. Now, I grant you, you might get used to it. Almost done. So the noise level changes, obviously, and you'll take this into consideration if cars are up or railroads, which do not move often. At least I don't see them moving often. So you would think that the road should be down, where the noise wouldn't spread as much. And if there is a sound panel, it would be largely blocked, hopefully by trees in season eventually. And it wouldn't block upper floors of BU either. So one would think that the automobiles should be down in your three options.
Well, you know, really, I know what we're going to evaluate. You know, the requirements are coming in. We're going to look at it in great detail in the implications of whether or not certain noise sources are elevated or not, and whether or not noise barriers would be effective or not. It's all going to be part of the study and documented well in the EIR.
I have no doubt you're going to do all this. I just hope it looks at all the issues and not just two of the issues, say, these two are the most important.
Oh, no, it's a comprehensive model that takes into account everything.
It's important for people on this side. So thank you. It does look like the steps are moving forward. I agree with previous comments, but the part is very disappointing.
So, gee whiz, okay. I'm going to keep working forward down this row, and then I'll cruise backwards down that row and work across the back. Yes, ma'am, Jackie?
I have a question about the intersection at Cambridge Street South and the East Drive connector.
Sure.
You wouldn't mind flipping that?
Let's see. Will this one do?
Yep.
Cambridge Street South and the East Drive connector,
Yep.
right here.
So
Yep.
I'm wondering about potential backups at that intersection, because to me it seems like that might be a bottleneck for all of the traffic coming west on both Storrow and the Mass Pike heading into Cambridge. Whether you take one or the other, you're either coming into that intersection and taking a right, or coming into it and trying to go straight. I just think that would be a lot of cars trying to go through one intersection, all going to Cambridge. I was wondering if you thought about that.
Well, so a couple of points, and I'll certainly let, I'll take a first swing at it if I don't get it right. Oh, I'm sorry. The concern expressed is that this is an awful lot of traffic funneling through this one intersection, and isn't it a potential bottleneck? So I'll take a first whack, and then I'll see if I got it right, and I'll turn to the rest of the team for further. One thing to note is that in terms of turnpike traffic, you can't actually see it here because it kind of would be down right about there. But the goal is to have, today, you basically have one big entrance point funneling into the turnpike and one big exit point funneling out of the turnpike. And yeah, they split up at the end, but it's really, everything's tied to Cambridge Street. It's sort of one of two crucial points. With this, turnpike traffic has, there would be another connection to this ramp system along here that would get traffic, you could get off and get up to Cambridge Street there as well. So there's 2 points of entrance and exit to the turnpike rather than just one big one. So the idea is to help kind of break the cars up. The other piece is, yes, you're right, it is an awful lot of traffic going through there. And that, you know, I was, again, you know, all of the lane counts here are subject to revision through the next run of the CTPS model, but I often, you know, everybody counts lanes, everybody wants to see. This is one of the most lane-filled intersections in the site for the reason that you mentioned. And, you know, there are a fair number of those lanes are turning lanes. Again, I'm not going to try to count it off from right here, especially with it subject to review, but that is, I think, could be the biggest one in the whole parcel. So that could be the largest one right there.
So is there another solution where you don't have everything coming there?
Well,
The solution is to keep it the way it is,
Yes.
and all the traffic that's gonna be focused or centered would be up at the River Street intersection where it currently is. So what we're trying to do, because you're absolutely right, in one of the areas that we had looked at very early on is whether or not there was going to be impacts associated with creating that new underpass as you're coming towards Field Road West into the district. But what it does is it alleviates a lot of the traffic concerns that are now currently centered or focused up at the River Street and King Street intersection because of traffic that's ideally looking to get to the turnpike. So it's in the range of about 40 to 50% of all the volumes coming off the Soldiers Road westbound are really striving to get to the interchange. So what we've looked at is, does it make sense? Is it the best option for us to try and bring that traffic that's looking to get to the interchange or get to I-90, bring it closer to I-90 so that it's really not centered or focused or congesting that intersection right by the bridge. Those volumes are somewhere in the range, believe it or not, of about 1,000 vehicles per hour in the peak hour. So it's a significant volume that we're pulling away from that intersection, trying to get them closer to where their destination is, and that's I-90.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
So I was interested in the impact on Memorial Drive. I wasn't sure. I thought I heard you say not much, but since it's the major source of noise in Newport, and I think of myself as avoiding that drive and going over to Storrow to go up to North Cambridge, will messing around with these intersections lead me to say, no, I'm going up that drive all the way, and how many other people will do the same?
So again, one of the things about the CTPS model is, it's not good at some things, it's good at others. One of the things it does tend to be good at is saying, well, when will people opt for one thing over another? Of course, then that's subject to the traffic engineer's judgment. You don't just take the model, you then have somebody who looks at the outputs and gives it a reality check. So it's a wedding of both man and machine there. In speaking with Eric Mackey at Tetra Tech, who's the traffic engineer for this, the changes here aren't necessarily, because of the sort of regional nature of the interchange, they're not necessarily going to push people to say, oh, well, Memorial Drive rather than Soldiers Field Road. The issue does become that, there's a lot of development going on in Cambridge, there's a lot of development going on beyond Cambridge, and a certain number of vehicles are going to want to use that regardless of how you configure the interchange. So right now it looks like it's between 3K4 and 3K refined. It's pretty much neutral in terms of between the two options. But again, the idea of do we suddenly push a lot more traffic to one location where it wasn't before, that's the kind of thing that would be explored with the EIR. And that also would feed into Jason's calculations of the model. Anything else? Good? All right. All right, I'm going to come back down this side. Yeah, I was waiting for you to get back to your seat.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor Davis.
So I'm concerned also about the access and egress to the turnpike. And right now, we're in a fairly favorable position in Cambridgeport and Riverside, getting to the turnpike and getting home. And following up on your conversation right now about are people going to switch to Memorial Drive? Well, the Star Drive option is also being made less agreeable. So I'm really looking at it from outbound from Boston and inbound, but there are actually 8 different movements that you're talking about here that are going to be affected on Starro, coming and going, and on the turnpike. And I just want to make sure that the CTPS model is really looking at what happens to the time of access or egress from the turnpike or Starro Drive to Cambridge. And I think if it's greatly increased, then you will see a lot of changes in people's behavior. Plus, I fear, in the ever thinking of economic development in Cambridge and the fact that people want to get home and they want to get to work, are these changes really going to slow everybody down a lot? I don't know. I just don't know. And I just want to make sure that your model is designed in such a way that you're going to capture all the impacts. I'd like to say that we like to think that we're all bikers and walkers, but sometimes we all get in our cars, right? Don't we? And so we want to be able to move around that way as well. And I want to make sure you're capturing all those changes, and I haven't heard that from you. And part of the reason I haven't heard it is that I'm waiting to hear about how it affects Cambridge, how the project affects Cambridge, and I don't really see you seeing that part of our issue, that the transportation to and from the turnpike, that's our exit or entrance. And I don't hear that that's been digested just yet.
No, I think, not only will, the model capture some of that, but then, I mentioned at the outset of the meeting that, we've had ongoing conversations with, Bill and the City of Cambridge transportation staff, at which Eric participates in all of those. So not only is the model going to look at it, Eric's modeling looks at it, and Eric benefits from or suffers from me constantly dinning in his ears public comment. And I think you really foreground the issue very well. And I would want, anybody, one of the reasons I put up the contact information at the end, there is one perspective that's been given in Alston about taking the right turn away and enhancing the space at the Narrows. There may be a different perspective in Cambridge. Maybe it's the same perspective. But it sounds like there's some difference there. So if folks feel strongly that that turn needs to be there, it'd be good to hear it. We will, of course, lay it all out in the DEIR, and the delay to Cambridge drivers, again, I quoted that number, kind of back of the envelope from Eric. It's at least, the key movement, coming home, it's about 3 extra minutes. That's the kind of thing that you'd see in the DEIR. You'd be able to say, okay, it's this way today, it's this way in the future, and you could base your comment on that.
Can I just...
Let me one thing I want to touch on too that Nate did mention is I think it might be the focus of what you're looking at. Delays, travel time delays as a result of any of the modeling that we're looking at. So the model, just so everybody understands, it's an Eastern Massachusetts regional model. It takes into account traffic movements that are going on I-93 that may be looking to access I-90 out here at Alston Interchange. It takes into account Route 28. O'Brien Highway. It takes into account Route 1. It tries to take into account, because this is a regional interchange, it takes into account traffic movements on 128 and how it would actually be trying to get to a particular point through this particular area, through the Alston interchange. The destination could be Cambridge. The destination could be Brookline. It could be Somerville. It could be Brighton. It could be Longwood Medical. It could be South Boston. So all of those areas have to be reflected. Now, getting to the other point that I wanted to mention is travel time delays. That is a component of what we look at when we're looking at the economic impacts associated in the DEIR, because we need to identify what are the inconveniences. Are there going to be travel time delays as a result of all the additional intersections that are going to be added into this particular area here for regional, but also for local traffic as well. So we do take those things into account.
And just to follow up, ultimately the development on East Drive and Cattle Drive and the type of development is going to make a difference too.
Absolutely.
How many traffic lights will there be between getting off the turnpike? And this is an easy way to look at it. How many traffic lights are there now, and how many traffic lights will there be? And what's the quality of the traffic that you're going through? So are you descending into neighborhood streets of gridlock when you get off the turnpike, or when you get off whatever, and then you're proceeding through, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile of gridlocked traffic, compared to the existing condition. And I think that what in Cambridge, what we'd like to see, I imagine that people will put up with some inconvenience, but not another 20 minutes. I don't think that that's really going to be acceptable. So I think that's why I really want the analysis. It's all well and good about Medford and Malden and Melrose and how all of them are affected, but frankly, I just want to know how we're going to be affected.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pros and cons associated with an improvement project of this magnitude and size. But I think if we go back 3 years ago, overall, the desire is from the, and I'll say it in the Boston community, but I think also from many of the Cambridge residents that I've spoken to as well, is that they really don't want to have a suburban high-speed interchange going through the heart of Boston on the fringes of Cambridge. They would like to see the urbanized type of interchange where you are slowing traffic down before it actually mingles in or mixes in with the community that it's being introduced into. So the Alston Village area, the Alston neighborhoods, the North Alston area, Brighton areas. So you're trying to slow traffic down. And what that does is it also opens up the opportunity for cyclists to be able to get through the area, pedestrians to be able to get through the area. That forces the need to slow traffic down, stop traffic, so that you do have that potential movement of cyclists, non-motorized users. And ultimately, create another district, a new neighborhood here, an area that's going to be open for whatever the purposes and land uses may be. It could be residential, it can be commercial, retail. It could be Harvard University for research, dormitories, education. So there's a wide range of opportunities and uses here that are made opportunist, or the opportunity presents itself as a result of some of the improvements that we're actually proposing at this point. So I can understand where the concerns are, but when you look at what the benefits overall will be to the region and to the area, it's a huge, huge win.
Okay, so.
Wow, all the sheets were, you'll pick up.
15 minutes.
15, we have 15 minutes left and then we have to clear the saloon?
You know, they close up at 9 and we need a few minutes to get out.
Okay, all right, that's fine. All right, so I'm gonna keep pushing backwards down this way here. I'm gonna go Carol, the gentleman in the glasses, and then Steve, and then the lady in the black turtleneck. And then Glenn, because you're a task force member, I'm gonna come up here to our host, Kathy.
Maybe you can hear all the questions and then answer them.
That's fine.
I have a very, I suppose, 1, 2,
Do that.
2, 1, 2.
Yes, no responses, we'll just look at.
Okay, go ahead.
We're taking notes here, so we're gonna catch, we're recording everything that you say right now, so if you don't have an opportunity to hear back from us, at least we're gonna have all of the concerns and comments recorded.
I want to make an observation first, and that is it James?
My name?
James?
Jason. Jason.
Oh, Jason. I think you were at our home on Glenwood and Magazine.
Yes.
And the photograph you showed of the two-family house was our neighbor's house where you took the sound measurement.
Yeah.
And where I asked you, why are you taking the sound measurement on the street where the sound is entirely blocked by all the buildings across the street and on the other side of Granite Street and the Moore School? Why aren't you taking the sound measurements up at where people hear the sound, where the sound is not blocked? And I heard you say this evening that those are the baseline measurements that you have taken. And I do not understand, because at least half the people in the area that are going to be affected by the sound live above the ground level. And more than that, because there are many three-story houses in that area. And we can see the Pike from our living rooms and dining rooms and bedrooms. So the fact that you have chosen to start with sound measurements at ground level as the base is very troubling. And the fact that
We should all be interested.
okay, so one more thing, and the fact that you will only be taking token measurements of higher level is very troubling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen with glasses.
Two questions. From your, sorry, it's another noise question. From your slide, it seemed to see that one of your points was that if you're a property owner, you have rights to sort of have an acoustical barrier. On our side of the river, we're not property owners, so do we have rights to have acoustic barriers erected? And sort of parallel is if BU wants an acoustical barrier, and do we get one also, and how do you judge that? And the second area of question is the Grand Junction Railroad. Is anything happening on that?
No.
This project? Okay.
It's a DNP, do not preclude.
Next question. Kathy, since you said it's short.
I'm Olivia.
I'm sorry, Olivia, go ahead.
Very simple. I'd like you to point out on this image where the darn Houghton gas tank things are. Where are they?
The Irish?
Is that the hotel though?
This is the hotel.
Okay.
This is the gas area. This is the rail spur.
Okay, so that's all going to stay?
Yes. The Houghton site stays, the rail spur
The
goes.
site stays, it's just the spur rail that goes. The sun, but it's
All right,
business and an
okay,
economic
okay,
opportunity. Next.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yes, this room has a noise problem. Everybody's noticed it.
Yeah.
People are not hearing what's going on. Why? Because there are fans all the way in the ceiling that are making noise that are conflicting with what we're saying and what we're hearing. Traffic will do the same thing if there's background noise from traffic. It may be wonderful on his measurements, but it still conflicts with our ability to communicate and to hear. And if you're like me, that slight hearing loss is even worse, okay? So, I didn't find the noise presentations very useful. It didn't deal with the problem that I hear on my street, which is Hamilton Street, the worst noise from the turnpike, which is jake brakes, between 3 and 5 in the morning. And it wakes me up in the morning in the summertime. You won't have that in the future if you get rid of the toll booth. You've gotten rid of the worst noise problem that we have, okay? That's good.
It's
All right.
It is still there.
I know. I'm talking totally about the toll booth. One last thing on this slide. The biggest bottleneck out there right now is in Cambridge. It's River Street and Memorial Drive, and that controls the whole exit from the turnpike and backs it up from there. So you have to understand that all the yellow here is going through the same old bottleneck.
It certainly is, yes. Thank you. Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. One, I just want to reiterate my concern about Memorial Drive. If I'm coming home from the airport with this new scheme, I'm not taking Sturo and going through the 3 stoplights. I'm taking the Mass Ave exit on Sturo Drive. I'm going over to Memorial and taking Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Memorial Drive has the potential to get really busy. I think of it as the little sister to Sturo, and I think it potentially could get reversed. That concerns me. I'm probably in the minority. I love the idea of a green space right there. I'm also concerned that there's a lot of data about ultrafine particles from in being within 2,000 feet of an interstate, and to think that that might be a big play area, and I-90 and Sturo are there. It's concerning. Obviously, the interstate exists there now, but there's not a park there, so worry less. But I'm sure that'll get vetted. I just want to comment.
Those are good comments. Thank you for that. Okay. Yes, sir. At the end, you have lunch.
Jack Wofford. I live up Magazine Street on Cottage Street and experience our area on this side of the river both as a pedestrian enjoying Magazine Park and a cyclist on both sides of the river, and waiting 20 minutes in the car coming off the Pike to River Street. So many perspectives. I understand, and you've said that there are 3 major alternatives, the viaduct and then two at grade. The presentation tonight seemed predominantly on the viaduct alternative. I would ask you to come back to Cambridge with an objective, balanced comparison of all of those three major alternatives with respect to the impacts on Cambridge. As you think about the Pike and the viaduct, there definitely is noise as trucks will climb the viaduct, which presumably would not be there if it's at grade. There may be differences in where you could have a noise barrier on a viaduct or on the at grade. If you could come back with those details with really clear graphics that compare these alternatives, I think we would have a much better basis for expressing preferences and also suggesting refinements going forward.
Okay. I can ask Kathy for another spot in the agenda at some point in the future. Yes, sir, and then, I think we started with you, didn't we, sir?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna let people go who haven't had a shot yet. First in the glasses, and then Glenn, I know I've delayed you to our task force member. Go ahead, sir.
I'm Steve Miller from Henry Street. I'm also on the board of Livable Streets Alliance. One thing that hasn't been mentioned yet, and I think it's important both for the project as a whole and for Cambridgeport, is pushing forward with the West Station concept and not pushing it down the road too far. I think creating the station and transit connections into Boston will change the traffic dynamics, will give people a second option for getting in and out of the area, and I think will help relieve some of the spillover to both sides of the river. That'll also be helped, I think, if we, again, picking up Jack's comment, take the at-grade options a little more seriously. I think by opening up some green space, by lowering the traffic height, it allows for more noise mitigation and it allows for more visual pleasantness as you're standing on the Cambridge side. I think that'll help pushing back Soldiers Field Road. And finally, I think it's really important to see this whole thing as a combined process so that it may take, as I understood what you said, an extra 3 minutes if you expand the parkland for people to go that way, and it's likely that I too, at that point, would go over to Memorial Drive. I assume your model would take that into account?
Yes,
and I think part of what we need is a better sense of the trade-offs as we go forward. I'd be willing to have 3 extra minutes if I really got a beautiful view and some more quiet out of Magazine Beach.